May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be aligned with your love, O God, our strength, our courage, our freedom, and our unity. Amen. Yesterday, in the Armory in Washington, D.C., on the eve of today's consecration of Michael Bruce Curry as the Episcopal Church's first African-American presiding bishop, hundreds of worshipers gathered for a Vigil Eucharist in preparation for today's great celebration in the National Cathedral, concluding as we are sitting here in Pasadena. I was struck by the choice of the entrance hymn for that Vigil Eucharist. The lengthy procession, we Episcopalians sure can have lengthy processions, entered the Armory as everyone sang the church's one foundation. The culminating stanza of that hymn is about union with those who have passed into the greater life. And that became one of the themes of the gathering, invoking the presence of our ancestors. There were many references to ancestors, certainly appropriate because yesterday, Halloween, was All Hallows' Eve, the eve of All Saints' Day, the day in which the centerpiece in liturgical churches is the remembrance of those who have died since our last All Saints' Sunday. We will indeed pray over that list in a few moments, not praying only for and giving thanks for those who have died in the last 12 months, but also for all the departed. Today is the Sunday each year devoted particularly to all of us bringing all our loved ones who are departed, holding them in our hearts, holding them in the energy of this room and this liturgy, and saying with our souls and spirits about them, presente. They are present. The culminating stanza of that hymn yesterday, the church's one foundation, speaks of the church having union not only with God, the three in one, but also having union, actually, it says, mystic sweet communion with those whose rest is one. You and I in this service have now entered into the realm of mysticism or heart knowledge. This is not only mental knowledge whose certainties strive to be on the level of objective science. All Saints' Day comes from experiential knowledge, heart knowledge, love knowledge, imagination knowledge, prayerful knowledge. Our wonderfully inspiring friend, the Reverend Peter Gomes, minister at Harvard's Memorial Church, was a friend of this church. He was our Lent event speaker a few years before his death. After working for us on Friday night and then all day Saturday in a Lent event extravaganza, and then preaching for us on Sunday at both the 9 and 11:15 service, and teaching at the Rector's Forum at 10:15, we were forming our procession outside for this 11:15 liturgy, and he came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder and said with his amazing New England accent, "My boy, I have renamed your lovely church and will forever refer to it as such. May it now be known as Our Lady of Perpetual Motion. Peter Gomes, who in 2011 passed into the greater life, loved the feast day of All Saints. He was elegantly emphatic about all his passions, especially about the central truth of All Saints' Day. Peter Gomes loved to tell his students and colleagues at Harvard to, quote unquote, hang on for dear life to the first verse of the 12th chapter of Hebrews, which reads that we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. As Professor Gomes put it clearly and simply, this verse means that we are in fact not alone, and that we most surely are not on our own. On All Saints' Day, gathered around this holy table with the names of the dead on our lips and in our hearts, we are taught and reminded that neither we nor they are alone, but that fellowship which was founded in creation cannot be broken, even by death. This is the ultimate society, Peter Gomes said. More important than the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis, even the United States of America. I would add the Episcopal Church. I would add the Christian communion. This is the ultimate society. The living and the dead, united in Christ. Peter saw it this way, the ultimate lesson to learn. Stunning that he called this the ultimate lesson. And the hardest, he said, is to know that we share in that fellowship. The fellowship founded in creation that cannot be broken, not even by death, is the most important lesson for us to know to be true. The figure of Hebrews 12, which is a metaphor called upon by the imagination of this particular liturgy today, the figure is of a great stadium with everyone who has passed into the greater life sitting and cheering from the stands as you and I continue to run the race that is set before us. Wherever we look in that stadium, we are surrounded by those who have already run their course, who wait for us and will us on, and who are not finished until we are. Just think about that. So, my friends, I want to claim from my heart that the community or family or fellowship founded in creation that cannot be broken is at the center of all that we do, spiritually, communally, and politically at All Saints Church. This amazing faith community named after the Feast of All Saints' Day. Our friend, Father Greg Boyle, the visionary Jesuit priest in Los Angeles, has developed the largest gang intervention program in the world called Homeboy Industries. It provides hope, training, and support to formerly gang-involved and previously incarcerated men and women. Father Greg loves to quote Mother Teresa of Calcutta as a way of explaining both the problems of the world and the solutions of the world and the raison d'etre for his work. It is a quotation that I think that gets at the heart of this morning's agenda. Mother Teresa of Calcutta said that all the problems of the world stem from the fact that we have forgotten that we belong to one another. This is that community, that family that was founded in creation that cannot be broken by death, about which Peter Gomes is arguing is the ultimate lesson to learn. and the hardest lesson to learn. It is the central life argument of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that absolutely everyone is a part of the network of mutuality, of interdependence, a beloved community to which we are called to express in our public policy, as well as in our intimate relationships, as well as in our more distant relationships. It is such, he said, so that when injustice is present anywhere, justice is threatened everywhere. I think we all here so clearly see that injustice and war, and what I have come to believe is one of the most deluded notions, the notion of the separate self, that other forms of violence and bigotry and exclusion and environmental degradation, all of these things assault the community, the family that was founded in creation, which death cannot sever. And too frequently, we also think that death apparently severs the community, the family that was founded in creation. However, the Feast of All Saints, the communion of saints, tells us that what is apparently true, that community is severable, is actually an illusion. Death, in fact, does not sever the community founded in creation. To the eyes of faith, life is changed, not ended. We are not alone, and thus we are not on our own. We are surrounded by a great stadium of cheerleaders, some yelling, some whispering, but all calling us to dare, to go for it, to be our true selves. I think of my father this morning, who died more than 30 years ago and had a really tough time with me. I had sailed off his map, and he had a very defined map for my life. I remember when he was on his deathbed, it just so happened that I was called to leave my home state to become the dean of a cathedral. I developed this proverbial elephant on the chest pain, learning later that it was a panic attack because I was sailing off my father's map. At that point, prior to his death, I was in a mentor-mentee relationship with Dr. and Rabbi Edwin Friedman. I took my concerns to him. He asked me about my family genogram, and he said that it's clear that you've never received a blessing from your father, and you must call him and see if he can bless you. Even though this is clear that you are leaving your religion, you are leaving your home state, you are leaving the culture he gave you. And because I was so interested in stopping this chest-oriented panic attack pain, I called my dad. My mother said that he didn't have the life force to talk with me, and so that she had to be on the extension, the phone extension. The rabbi had told me, you can refer to me as some kind of crazy rabbi. I said, Dad, I've been talking with this crazy rabbi about this pain that's on my chest. And he said, I've simply got to acknowledge the fact that I'm leaving the church, according to you, going to the Episcopal Church, but that was different. Leaving the state, leaving what you've planned for me. And Dad, I just need to know if I can get your blessing. And my father summoned the life force to say the following: Son, go for it. he is in the stadium, cheering me on, and he's cheering you on. Because everybody in the stadium now knows that to be alive is to leave and sail off your map. Because all of our maps have, to some degree, elements of fear and alienation. And in the freedom that we sang for in the Requiem just a few moments ago, we need to have a course charted by love. Yesterday, the brilliant professor of religion at Princeton, Elaine Pagels, taught us about a tone poem of great beauty and mystical truth that has captivated her right now, called The Gospel of Truth. Many of you know of her work and know of her claims and arguments that there were these 4 Gospels that kind of made it into the Bible, and then there are all these other Gospels, sometimes known as the Gnostic Gospels, probably devotional Gospels, Gospels that were telling about the meat of the secret of the good news that couldn't be spread to first-time hearers. And the Gospel of Truth, probably part of this tradition. And one of the many things that Professor Pagels taught us, many, many things, this is not to reduce everything she taught us down to one thing, but she taught us was in harmony with this foundational community that came into being in creation. It's not something that just happened in the past. It is an experience with a capital E that is ongoing. Or as Peter Gomes said, in God all tenses, past, present, future, all grammar, all syntax meet. God is the one who is the same yesterday and today and forever, also binds up yesterday and today in forever, where saints on earth and saints above rejoice, and not alone, but together, not for themselves alone, but for each other. And this creation, the spirit of this creation, Professor Pagels said, she gave me this metaphor, I hope I was just not imagining it, but I think she said it, that is, this spirit of creation is chasing after us to reveal to us that we are already indissolubly connected with our source, capital S, and with all beings. And to be human is to have nightmares of separateness, alienation. And to the degree that any of us might be having those nightmares or maybe living in those nightmares, this loving spirit of God's community from the foundation is chasing us to help us discover that ultimately the nightmare is not real. That's what revelation, resurrection, transformation are all about. When we realize that love with the capital L teaches us that our nightmarish alienation and fear are not ultimately true, that is the moment of grace we all long for. It's All Saints' Day grace. It's the grace of the communion of saints' grace, which we are called then, as soon as we discover it, or even when we discover it in part, to give generously to other people because everyone else is starving to come out of the nightmares. I never compose a sermon without consulting communion of saints, and 2 mystics whom I have in my heart this morning, John O'Donohue, the former Catholic priest, poet, Thomas Merton, my North Star in my life, warned of the dangers of being split against ourselves. Merton trekked in the language of the true self versus the false self, and as soon as we give ourselves over to any degree to our false self, we are split. John O'Donohue says that when we die, we meet our true selves to the degree we've yet to have some true self to meet. And we are united with ourselves and with everyone else. That's what death is for these guys. It's a heavenly death. Thomas Merton said, what can we gain by sailing to the moon if we're not able to cross the abyss that separates us from ourselves? This is the most important of all voyages of discovery, and without it, all the rest are not only useless, but disastrous. I love what little I know about Gabriel Fauré, who wrote this wonderful Requiem. It's different from all other requiems. He said that in this requiem, he wanted to really pay attention to his own religious imagination. And he wanted it to be dominated from beginning to end by a very human feeling of faith in eternal rest. It's as if he were like John O'Donohue saying that death is this moment of integration and unification. He told an interviewer, Fauré did, he said, it has been said that my requiem does not express the fear of death. He said it's actually a lullaby of death. It is thus that I see death, a happy deliverance, an aspiration toward happiness above, rather than as a painful experience. And speaking of somebody who sailed off the map, Fauré said, as to my requiem, perhaps I have also instinctively sought to escape from what I thought was right and proper. After all the years of accompanying burial services on the organ, I know it all by heart. I wanted to write something different. My friends, our work in the stadium is to learn and become stronger and more daring to base all of our life on the unifying energy of love more than fear and alienation and all the other things that give us nightmares and are the fuel of our causing nightmares to others, particularly those who live on the margins of life. So we on earth are called to have union with God the Three-in-One, and mystic sweet communion with those whose rest is won. O happy ones and holy, Lord, give us grace that we, like them, the meek and lowly, in love, may dwell with thee.